because undoubtedly somebody was going to ask a question. We have a remarkable man who has chosen to serve as the Secretary of State for the Philippines at this time. He is a courageous man, a lawyer who has put himself on the line when it mattered. When we had a previous impeachment, he was courageous to be one of the few people willing publicly to stand up and testify. And that shows the character that is in him that led to President Duterte saying, this is the man I want at a crucial time who's going to be the spokesman for the Philippines. We're very fortunate that he's here. We're very lucky that a man of his character is serving this time and that he has given us the honor to be the recipients of his first remarks visiting Washington. Would you please, with your warm applause, welcome the Secretary of State, Perfecto Yasay. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm glad that the first order of business was to brief me about where the emergency exits are, so that in the remote possibility that things get too hot in here, I know where to run and have ice cream with all of you. Thank you, Dr. John Hambre, for your kind introduction. Incidentally, I'd like to introduce my wife, Cecilia Yasay, who's here in front. Didn't want to miss this event. Yes, for your kind introduction and for your warm welcome to me as I give my address to the Center for Strategic and International Studies. I am indeed honored to join you this morning. It is very appropriate that as Philippine Secretary of Foreign Affairs, was peaceful, and we saw the highest voter turnout of 81.62%, with President Duterte receiving 6 votes, over 6.6 million votes more than the closest or his closest rival. Every election exercise in the Philippines is meaningful, given that our foreign country fought hard to ensure that the democratic processes restored through the historic and bloodless People's Power Revolution in 1986 are preserved and never again compromised. My country's independence was also hard-fought and hard-won, and we zealously value and guard our independence. The Philippines' guiding principles are enshrined in the Constitution that include the supremacy of laws, freedom, equality, peace, justice, and the right of self-determination. Among these is also the mandate to pursue an independent foreign policy to promote the paramount national interests. First of all, may I speak of President Duterte. I know that his leadership style has been subject of considerable news coverage these days. Allow me, someone who has known the President for many decades, to share with you an insight into the presidency. I have known President Duterte since we were students and sharing a room at a YMCA Youth Center dormitory in Manila. He is a man of uncommon courage, a leader governed by fundamental principles of truth-telling, justice, fair play, and compassion. He comes across as fearless, with a strong language, and he has a heart for the downtrodden and the poor. His character is marked by that rare quality of integrity and honesty. Some may think of him as unconventional. That is because he hates double talk. President Duterte brings to the presidency his experience as a trial prosecutor for 10 years and as a 7-term mayor of Davao City. His exposure to the grassroots and local government units has allowed him to know the pulse of the people, their needs and aspirations. He knows the government bureaucracy, or how the government bureaucracy works, and he has the talent and energy to so master such bureaucracy that he can get things done fast. He has stated that he will be guided by established norms and procedures under the law to deliver on the strong mandate given to him by the Filipino electorate. Under the firm and decisive leadership of President Duterte, the current administration has set its sights on establishing a clean government, free of corruption and criminality. During his State of the Nation address, the President made some pledges which reflect the goals of his administration. For your easy appreciation, I have clustered the President's pledges along 4 priority commitments. These commitments will be the basis of the Philippines' foreign policy and economic diplomacy initiatives. First, the Philippines is unequivocally committed to the rule of law. The President has made clear that his platform of government will be based on the rule of law, and this is best manifested in his actions and his orders to his team that they must strictly adhere to due process. This rule of law doctrine fully governs the President's war on criminality and illegal drugs. The President is a lawyer, and he knows exactly the extent and limits of the law as they guide government actions and law enforcement. The President subscribes to the belief that the law must be used to protect the people against criminal elements and government abuses that have prevented our people's advancement. Please bear in mind that a war against drugs encompasses the control of demand, reduction of supply, and sending the guilty to jail to stop their nefarious activities or to afford them a chance for rehabilitation so they could go back to the mainstream of society as useful and law-abiding citizens. The President has also expressed his zero tolerance against corruption in government. For far too long, the Philippines has been unable to fully reap the benefits of its remarkable economic growth, due in part to corruption. The Philippines dropped 10 notches in the most recent Global Corruption Index. As such, the President has made clear that corruption must stop on its tracks. In a real sense, the corruption has become the breeding ground for the illegal drug trade, which has grown up to be a monster in the midst of Philippine society. There is also a pressing need to eliminate the inequitable economic and political structures that have prevented and hampered growth. President Duterte would like to realize this within the shortest possible time. The extensive media coverage on the Philippines' war on drugs and corruption is not lost to us. Concerns have been raised on the rising number of deaths. As such, deaths have been conveniently labeled as extrajudicial killings. Let me assure you, however, that full respect for human rights and the value and dignity of every person is a state policy in our Constitution, to which the Duterte administration is firmly committed to uphold. We will not veer from this. Law enforcement officials are bound by legal procedures and strict operational protocols. The President has made it clear law enforcement authorities are to apprehend criminals and that they must use, or that the use of reasonable force may only be considered if the law enforcement officer's life is threatened. We do not and will never condone any unlawful killings. And Philippine authorities have been instructed to immediately look into these incidents and bring the perpetrators to justice. In the book of President Duterte and in my book, extrajudicial killing has no place in our society. Second, the Philippines is committed to peace. The President is driven by his passion for bringing about peace and stability in our country. For this reason, he has opened the gates to the country's stakeholders who have had a strong running quarrel with our duly constituted government to come to the negotiation table. The government, under the direction of the President, is now addressing the issues and grievances raised by such stakeholders as Bangsamoro, members of the Communist Party of the Philippines, which include the National Democratic Front and the New People's Army. The President considers the Abu Sayyaf group a terrorist organization of criminals who operate under the guise of religious belief. He declared an all-out war against these lawless elements with the full force of the armed forces of the Philippines. This Abu Sayyaf challenge has unfortunately become a regional issue, and thus counterterrorism efforts with neighboring countries, Indonesia and Malaysia, are currently being fast-tracked. The tragic events in Davao City more than a week ago provided yet another reason to fast-track the President's fight against criminality. We appreciate the expressions of support, including the U.S. offer of assistance in the investigation process. With our firm resolve and the support of our allies, we shall defeat these lawless elements and ensure the safety and security of our nation and people. Third, the Philippines is committed to its people. Above all, what drives the President is the passion to seek the welfare, well-being, and bright future for all Filipinos. He is firmly committed to deliver basic services to our people. Specifically, the President seeks a higher standard of living and the efficient provision of social services, cutting bureaucratic red tape and streamlining operations. Such social services include health, education, housing, food, and water. This is a policy which applies to all Filipinos, including the 10 million Filipinos abroad. We are steadfast in our commitment to protect and promote the rights of overseas Filipinos. In this effort, the country continues with its active efforts to combat human trafficking as part of our overall commitment to ensure the protection of all of our nationals. I appreciate the State Department's acknowledgement of the Philippines' anti-trafficking efforts and will ensure we continue to exert our full effort to protect our nationals. We are confident that our efforts will continue to be recognized in terms of future tier rankings of the Philippines. And lastly, but not the least, the Philippines is committed to be a responsible partner in its relations with the international community. Philippine foreign policy has always been anchored on three pillars: economic diplomacy, national security, and protecting Filipino overseas. We will continue to be guided by these as we focus on cementing our old relationships and looking for new partners to address common interests and challenges. President Duterte's domestic concerns compel the Philippines to partner with like-minded countries in the areas of maritime security, counterterrorism, disaster response, and transnational crime such as drug and human trafficking. The Philippines is also committed to sustaining our role as a reliable economic partner and is looking to pursue reforms to maintaining competitiveness and improve the ease of doing business in the country. This commitment to the rule of law, to peace, to our people, and to our relations with the international community also extends to the recent decision of the Arbitral Tribunal of the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. The arbitral award, which is final and binding to all parties, is a clearly established fact and is now part of international jurisprudence in maritime domain. President Duterte is uncompromising in his position that whatever track the Philippines pursues will be based on the decision of the tribunal. The Philippines views the decision as a guiding light for every decision made or action taken. Any unilateral action that is not rules-based will not be taken. With the tribunal ruling, the Philippines looks forward to pursuing confidence-building measures. The Philippines is also committed to the peaceful resolution of disputes, including full respect for legal and diplomatic processes. A vital component of the Philippines' independent foreign policy is the Philippines-US alliance. Our American friends, from President Barack Obama to cabinet secretaries to the leadership of the US Congress and to the officials with whom we deal daily, have often spoken about their government's ironclad commitment to its alliance with the Philippines. We value this commitment and resolve to be a proactive, reliable, and responsible partner. We appreciate that the U.S. has invested a great deal of time and valuable resources in Asia with its rebalance policy, and the Philippines hopes to show that our partnership has been and will continue to be both important and mutually beneficial. The past 6 years have seen a deepening of Philippine-U.S. military and security relations. Our security cooperation has broadened in terms of the areas of cooperation, levels of engagement, and types of activities we are undertaking together. The decision of the Supreme Court earlier this year to uphold the constitutionality of the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA, pave the way for the Philippines and the United States to better address security and disaster-related imperatives. As you may already know, agreement has been reached on 5 locations where EDCA would be implemented. The end goal of EDCA's implementation is to increase the interoperability of the armed forces of the Philippines and the U.S., enhance joint capacities for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, and improved maritime security and domain awareness. You will recall the visit of U.S. President Barack Obama to the Philippines last year. President Obama chose Manila to deliver the U.S. long-standing commitment to the security and stability of Southeast Asia. He announced the transfer of a 3rd U.S. Coast Guard cutter, Boutwell, and an oceanographic vessel or research vessel, Melville, to the Philippines. I am pleased to note that the Melville, renamed BRP Velasquez, has already arrived in the Philippines, and the Boutwell has set sail for the Philippines on July 21 from Alameda County. We will also continue to do our share in preserving the peace and security of our region, specifically in terms of boosting our national capabilities and advocating for a rules-based international order. Our solid security engagement is matched by a highly productive economic partnership. The central theme of the Philippines' economic diplomacy in the United States has been geared toward the economic transformation of the Philippines, and such transformative drive will be continued with more resoluteness by President Duterte. One piece of good news is the Philippines' 70% second quarter growth rate, the highest in ASEAN and even higher than the growth trajectory of China. Some economic highlights include the Partnership for Growth and the decision of the Millennium Challenge Corporation to develop a second compact for the Philippines. This followed the highly successful first compact, which provided $434 million for critical infrastructure, improved revenue management tools, as well as health and sanitation projects. The Philippines and the United States also renewed their commitment to increase economic ties with the Trade and Investment Framework Agreement Mechanism, or TIFA. The latest round of TIFA talks resulted in candid evaluation of trade-related matters such as investment, customs, intellectual property rights, agricultural trade concerns, and the U.S. Generalized System of Preferences, or GSP. The healthy economic partnership with the U.S. is manifested in any of the following: TIFA, the renewal of the GSP last year, the removal of the Philippines from the Special 301 watch list on IPR, and FAA's reinstatement of the Philippines' Category 1 status. We also enjoy a bumper harvest in our trade relations. In 2015, total PH-US trade volume registered at $18.2 billion, slightly down from 2014, but 15% higher than 2010. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, we can do more. The Philippines and the U.S. are natural business partners because of our shared values and common interests. We are hosts to some 600 American companies and their affiliates, and I continue to invite more U.S. businesses to set up operations in the Philippines in the priority sectors of information technology and business process management, infrastructure, tourism, and manufacturing. One of the most robust sectors is the information technology business processing outsourcing, or IT BPO industry. The Philippines has overtaken India as the call center capital of the world. In 2016, this industry is expected to generate approximately 1.3 million total jobs, representing 17% annual growth. For those in the room who represent the business community, let us continue to challenge ourselves and see how we can work together to increase the volume of trade and number of U.S. investments in the country. With close to 3.4 million Filipinos in the U.S., we represent the fourth largest immigrant community in your country. I was exposed to the Filipino diaspora while I was living in New York as a practicing lawyer for over 10 years. And I am proud to have seen their positive contributions there. The U.S. has been the second largest tourist market of the Philippines for 4 consecutive years since 2011. Several platforms are available for regular people-to-people interactions, such as the Exchange Visitor Program of the U.S. Department of State and the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative by the White House. Filipino participants in these programs have been recognized for their competence, enthusiasm, and intellect. I wish to see the coming years a great increase in the number of Filipino students pursuing higher education in the U.S. For the past 3 years, the number has hovered around 3,200 students, and I wish to see growth in that number. Everyone agrees that education is a great equalizer. And so I hope our two governments can work together to have more Filipinos study in the U.S. to complement the solid education they acquire from universities in the Philippines. Change has come to the Philippines. That is not an empty boast. We catch a vision of a corruption-free and drug-free Philippines. We want our people to fully trust in the government's ability to protect their fundamental rights and liberties. With such confidence in our ability to make new changes, we are prepared to break new ground and explore new horizons. The change we are seeking, however, will remain grounded on the most enduring precepts, which is our own national interests. We recognize that a secure, stable, and prosperous Philippines will require a secure and stable rules-based regional order as well. Thus, we remain committed to the principled network of alliances that has for many years guaranteed the stability and enabled the prosperity in our region. We will continue to do our part in building a region where fundamental freedoms are respected in word and in deed. In this effort, we will always view the United States as an esteemed and trusted ally with whom we share not just a common history and shared values, but a common destiny as well. Just as the Philippines is completing its transition of power, the U.S. is approaching its own elections and transition. The Philippines look forward to the continuation of the United States' ironclad commitment to the Philippines and will continue to strengthen its relations with the U.S. The priorities and commitments of the Duterte administration give the Philippines and the U.S. an opportunity to build on their enduring alliances. They open the gates for even wider cooperation with the U.S. The challenges ahead will require nimble and nuanced diplomacy, but I am confident that our alliance, based on mutual trust and respect, will continue to contribute to the peaceful and stable region that both our countries have committed to our people. History has shown that progress and prosperity have been achieved at phenomenal levels when men and women crossed the boundaries set by custom and tradition. It is because, as Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes has put it wisely, a mind stretched to a new idea never goes back to its original dimension. Together, as partners in peace and development, our two countries will stretch our collective minds to new ideas of cooperation and productive endeavors, and such a mind will grow bigger in dimension every time it is stretched. Thank you, and good day. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Yasay, thank you so much for your visit here today. I think your remarks have really shown the breadth of our relationship. It's not just a security alliance, but we have a very strong economic partnership, shared values, and very strong people-to-people ties. At the same time, President Duterte and his prosecution of this war on drugs, we've seen over the last 3 months the death toll from vigilantes and police rise to about 3,500 people, which has given rise to a lot of concerns about human rights and due process and extrajudicial killings. President Obama has made clear that he wants to speak to these concerns when he has the chance to meet with your president, and as he does with other leaders all over the world, including when he visited Vietnam and Beijing and his meeting yesterday with Aung San Suu Kyi. But this, of course, expectation that President Obama might raise this issue is what led to the initial harsh words and the canceled meeting in Laos, a real missed opportunity for the two leaders to meet and discuss the breadth of our relationship. So clearly this is going to be an issue that's going to be a bit of a thorn in the side of our relationship. And how do you think we can manage it as a strong alliance with many dimensions? How can we manage this issue over the next several years?
Well, I think we should proceed on the premise that the Philippines and the United States are sovereign equals. Mm-hmm. We work together in mutual respect, and we work together very closely in terms of promoting our mutual interests. And where this interest converges, then let's even work closer to make it achieve the kind of successes that we would like to achieve. On the other hand, if these interests would be in conflict one way or the other, you must realize that the paramount national interest must always be pursued. So it is in this respect that we are asking America to look at our programs, to look at the things that we want to make sure the President's commitment to change will be achieved in the light of our priorities, our urgent needs, and our historical experience. We would like to assure you that even before America became a colonial power in the Philippines, the Philippines being its only colony in Asia, the Filipinos had already fully understood the sanctity of human life, the dignity of human life, the respect and certain inalienable rights about liberty, freedom, responsibility, and opportunity. These have already been well established in the minds of Filipinos, and this was precisely at the core of our struggle for independence and our right of self-determination. So it is in this context that I am asking our American friends and our American leaders to look at our aspirations. We cannot forever be the little brown brothers of America. At one point in time, we have to mature, we have to develop, we have to grow, and become the big brother of our own people, of the next generation of Filipinos. And it is in this respect that I feel you manage it correctly. You do not go to the Philippines and say, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to help you develop. I'm going to help you grow. But these are the checklists that you must comply with. We will lecture you on human rights. No, we know that our goal towards the full respect for human rights in accordance with international norms is that goal. But we also know that we are all striving, the United States and the Philippines, in meeting all of these goals and objectives. And in this sense, we must show mutual respect and assistance in helping each other achieve our goals.
Let me ask you about the alliance, which, as you said, is ironclad. We've made a lot of progress over the last 2 years, from signing the EDCA, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, to agreeing on 5 locations for activities and investments. We are now doing, we've launched 2+2 meetings with the foreign secretaries and defense secretaries, and we've launched a range of new cooperative activities, such as joint patrols and other things. We're providing assistance to the Philippines for maritime domain awareness under the Maritime Security Initiative. So I think it's fair to say that at the mill-to-mill level, you know, the daily engagement and training and consultation between PACOM and the Armed Forces of the Philippines has never been stronger. And yet, at the same time, over the past 10 days or so, we've seen a sort of daily stream of some remarks made by President Duterte, which seem to be somewhat negative towards the United States and towards the close alliance with the United States, some of these activities. So should Washington be concerned that Manila is seeking to soften its security ties to the United States? And specifically, should Washington be concerned at all about momentum to implement EDCA?
No. In fact, one of the first things that our president has assured our American friends and the international community was something that he said at his inaugural speech, and that is to maintain, respect, and preserve our alliances and our agreements with the United States. And he even mentioned specifically EDCA, especially so that the Philippine Supreme Court had ruled on its constitutionality and legality. And he is committed to this. When he made those statements about no joint patrols, he made it in the context of preserving our territorial sovereignty in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, where we have our maritime entitlements. He did not want any joint patrol in this area to be seen as a provocative stance that we are taking, especially so that all of us realizes that the decision of the arbitral tribunal cannot be implemented because the PCA does not have any enforcement arm in enforcing this arbitral tribunal's decision. But the whole idea is with respect to preserving the territorial integrity of the Philippines within our territorial boundaries, the 12-mile territorial limit, that is something that I am sure that joint patrols will continue and must continue because this is our commitment to the United States. But insofar as our exclusive economic zone, which is contested incidentally, and we're trying to see how we can peacefully arrive at a solution without exacerbating the tensions and engaging into violent confrontation, our objective or our recognition is that, as even stated by the Arbitral Tribunal's decision, these are international waters. Everybody can undertake their own exercises. Even the Philippines will continue to undertake its own patrol in securing what is, from the standpoint of international law and the 1982 UNCLOS, our rights in exploiting both living and non-living resources in the area. And so that statement about the president that some people might have misunderstood must be seen in the light of precisely securing these matters, as I've said, in pursuit of our national interest.
Okay.
So the important thing that we must remember is that the president is firmly committed to keep and respect its alliances, including that with the United States.
Following former President Ramos's visit to Hong Kong to discuss the South China Sea issues with China, what are the next steps that the Philippine government plans to take with China on these negotiations?
We are not, at this point in time, prepared to sit down with China on bilateral engagements with respect to our dispute in the South China Sea until and unless both parties are prepared to sit down and discuss this matter. To begin with, we cannot proceed on engaging China in bilateral talks where China says that we can only talk outside of the framework of the Arbitral Tribunal's decision, in the same way that the Philippines is insisting that if we talk, we should talk only within the framework of the Arbitral Tribunal's decision. But then, as you can see, the relationship of the Philippines with China is not limited to, it's just that area of the disputed territory in the South China Sea is a small portion of our relationship. We would like to continue engaging everyone, including China, our neighbors, in pursuing other interests that include trade, investments, infrastructure development, cultural exchanges, people-to-people contact. And this is the kind of job and special authority on the part of President Ramos to pursue. It has nothing to do with engaging China in these bilateral talks with respect to the South China Sea disputes. Of course, the natural effect of engaging China in the other areas of concern will precisely open the door for more open, unconditional discussions of this dispute with the view of receiving resolving the dispute peacefully. But the next step with respect to what President Ramos will be doing is now perhaps to go into a more official basis. He did so. The first trip was, according to him, a fishing expedition to renew ties with his old friends, who incidentally are also well connected still with the government of China. But the next step, to my mind, should be now to undertake this on an official basis as special envoy with respect to the areas of concern that relate to what we should promote as our relationship with China, as I've mentioned earlier. We would hope that this would open the doors for our more openness to talk without any conditions about how we will resolve our dispute with respect to the South China Sea. But I'd like to just emphasize that even as we would like to forge closer relationship with our neighbors, with China, with the rest of ASEAN, especially as we are part of ASEAN with our traditional partners and our allies, it does not necessarily mean that forging closer relationship with one is alienating the other. And this is precisely what he means in the context of saying that we must pursue an independent foreign policy. And that is what our Constitution mandates, and to pursue amity with all nations.
Let me open it up to questions. We have a few minutes left before Secretary Yasay has to leave. We will pass microphones and ask you to introduce yourself. Let me start with this gentleman here in the front row.
Mr. Minister, I'm Will Embry from DynCorp International. Thank you for a brilliant maiden speech in the U.S. We very much appreciate that. In line with the last questions, there have been some media reports of conflicting statements by the Philippine government on whether the government wants U.S. military troops to continue in Mindanao and supporting the government's efforts against terrorists. And I wonder if you could clarify those statements.
The President made a statement about Americans and certain military personnel in the Philippines to probably think about pulling out at this time when the Philippines is going to engage in an all-out offensive against Abu Sayyaf. And he has explained it only yesterday that this is a temporary measure to keep our friends, the Americans, out of harm's way. And also, at the same time, to give the Filipino people in the area, even as we will be engaging in an all-out offensive against Abu Sayyaf, and also move forward towards finalizing and completing the peace process involving Bangsamoro and the other rebellious factions in the Philippines, to give them a breather. And he has emphasized that this is not a change of policy, this is not a reneging of our commitments and our alliances, but it is done simply on a temporary basis to achieve the two basic objectives of why he said this: to keep the Americans and other foreigners out of harm's way, and two, to give the Philippines and the parties who are at the negotiating table insofar as achieving an enduring and lasting peace, especially amongst our brothers, our Moro brothers and sisters, a breather in this regard. But no change in policy. It continues. We will continue to move further in strengthening our relationship with the U.S. and adhere to our commitments.
Okay. The gentleman in the front here. Yes. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Arnedo S. Valera. I'm the chairperson of the U.S. Pinoys for Real Change in the Philippines. And of course, you remember June as a colleague in the immigration law practice in New York, and your wife Cecil. I'm here to present to you a proposal from the U.S. Pinoy's Real Change in the Philippines with respect to the creation of the West Philippine Sea Resources Council that would initiate and undertake joint and multilateral ventures and initiatives in the West Philippine Sea to benefit stakeholders, especially the Filipino people, as well as the statement of support of the Filipino-American community in the U.S. for President Duterte's drug war under the rule of law and due process, as well as the pledge of 200,000 pesos for the families and victims of slain policemen who were killed in line of duty, and again under the principle that we do not and should not presume that our Philippine National Police and the military are killers. And we are observing the commitment of this presidency to the rule of law, justice, and human rights. If I would be allowed to
Yes,
hand
I'm very
it
happy to receive that, and rest assured that it will be given fullest consideration. You have a contact address also, so we can...
yes, we do. I have that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Secretary.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Man in the red shirt there. I'll wait for the microphone and please identify yourself.
Oh, hi. My name is John Rhee. I'm an overseas Filipino healthcare worker representing Migrante DC, which is it's an arm of Migrante International, a union of Filipino migrant workers. So as an overseas Filipino worker who sees the ongoing peace talks between the government of the Republic of the Philippines and the negotiations you mentioned with the National Democratic Front of the Philippines, as a comprehensive way to fulfill the Filipino people and even the collective diaspora's aspirations for a just and lasting peace in the Philippines. We actually applaud President Duterte's positive, substantial steps in restarting these peace talks. But for you, Sir Yasay, as the Secretary of Foreign Affairs,
Can you just please come a little closer? I have a difficulty hearing you from that distance. Yeah. Okay.
Excuse me. So yes, we applaud President Duterte for his substantial steps in restarting these peace talks. But for you, Mr. Yasay, as the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, what are your thoughts on supporting the President's efforts in these peace talks by improving general public opinion and removing barriers that we see to these peace talks? For example, lifting the U.S. foreign terrorist designation of the Communist Party of the Philippines and the New People's Army, and the promotion of a homegrown, self-reliant, and a national industry in the Philippines. Because I know that your emphasis was more on IT and BPO, but what are your thoughts on not only the terrorist designation of the peace talk stakeholders, but also promotion of a national homegrown industry?
You're getting into a detail that is not in my fullest area of expertise. But let me just tell you generally that certainly we have to strengthen our area of our manufacturing sector that has really been lagging too far behind. Our exports of Philippine products have been much less than our imports of foreign goods, and this is something that we would really like to address. The only area of vigorous what do you call this activity that we are undertaking with respect to giving us the economic benefits is that related to the export of people, of manpower. Yeah, and this is something that we would like to improve. As a matter of policy, while we are trying to make sure that the interests of our overseas Filipino workers are always protected, not only from the time that they leave the country, but even up to the time that they reach the destination and be working there, our objective is to make sure that they will not be compelled to leave the country because they have no choice. But that they will be able to make sure that they can remain back home. The choice is to remain there because there will be adequate jobs commensurate to their qualifications in pursuing advancement, especially for their families. We have also an area that is developed in the Philippines, particularly in the real estate development sector, that has helped us through the years in giving us even this good GDP performance. But we also see that it is not, the benefits only are limited to about 40 families, and it has not really gone down to the total population. We brag about a marked increase in our GDP and our competitiveness, but really it has not benefited the majority of our people. And it is in this area that we are trying to push hard for Filipino entrepreneurship to develop. The sad fact is that while America has taught us and given us the gift of democracy, freedom, it has really stopped short at the time that it came to the Philippines, introducing democracy to us in democratizing ownership of wealth and wealth-creating opportunities. And this is what we would really like to try to develop. Small and medium enterprises is a top priority. that even we're trying to promote, not only in the Asian region, but even on a worldwide basis. So yes, we are encouraging these kinds of activity on the part of the Filipinos, and we would hope that our efforts, government efforts in making sure that we are able to break down the economic structures, the political structures that have resulted in a lot of inequalities, will succeed within the first few years, so that all of these objectives in ensuring the advancement of the life of people on an equal basis, where opportunities are really democratized and will not only benefit a few, and the dismantling of an oligarchy that has been perpetuated even since our colonial days will be finally a thing of the past.
Well, thank you, Secretary Yasay, for visiting us here at CSIS. I know you have a lot of meetings in Washington here this week and New York next week, but we really appreciate that you made your first stop here with us to talk about U.S.-Philippine relations. And thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Secretary Yasay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.